welcome to CX Today. My name is Charlie, I'm the senior editor here, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Jen Bailon, Chief Revenue Officer at SAP Customer Experience. Jen, it's great to have you join us. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thank you so much. I happen to be at SAP Madrid, so Sapphire Madrid today. I'm doing some amazing customer meetings. We have keynote, we have a large event today, and so excited to be here talking with you.
Yeah, SAP and not SAP. I always say that, but yeah, either way, it's a huge brand and very exciting announcements that you've recently released, which I'm excited to talk about. And these advancements, these new additions to the Service Cloud, yeah, there are lots of them, as I say. And I think the first kind of new feature that I really want to kind of pick your brains about is the improvements made to the agent console. So I don't know if you could kind of give us a little insight about what's happening there.
Yeah, so let me start from the top. So SAP has in the customer experience market has been around for a while, and customers know us on the ERP side of the business very well. Many know that we are here in CX, but some don't, and so it's worth just reminding folks that we do have products across the board in order to delight customers and drive amazing customer experiences. In the past, what has happened and what you see in the market today is that there tends to be this talk about a back end and a front end. And SAP has done very well over the last 50 years in the market with the back end, which is the ERP side of the business. Most customers aren't aware of just the full breadth of capabilities that we have on the front end. And that extends across many products overall. But one set is the set that I lead as the Chief Revenue Officer, and that's the CX portfolio of products, of which Service Cloud, Intelligent Service Cloud, is a brand new launch that we have. And we're first to market with cloud native service that actually pulls from the back end to the front end, so that to your direct question around agent consoling, if you imagine a world where an agent is called and they were asked about a specific product and whether or not it has been shipped. Maybe they call in with some sort of complaint about a product breaking in the manufacturing world or the retail world, and they want something like that replaced. In today's capability set, there's no other vendor out there in the market outside of SAP who is able to actually have such deep visual insight to the back end where inventory is, where supply chain is, to understand how quickly they can resolve customer issues. So we're suddenly able to put real power into the hands of the agents that are helping customers so that they feel empowered to solve issues very quickly. So you imagine in a world today where you're calling into a customer service center, in many cases, you're already upset. Something's wrong. And so that agent needs to actually help that client as fast as possible. What this helps us do, though, Charlie, that's actually very interesting is it now puts the power in the client's hands and customers' hands in order to shift their customer service centers to real profit centers so that pre-transaction, during transaction, post-transaction, and then hopefully as customers start driving revenue cycles that have to do with subscriptions and new revenue models, those connection points with the customers that pull from the back end are able to delight customers all along the relationship cycle. So that's what I would tell you about Intelligent Service Cloud.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you mentioned a very good point in that SAP are kind of uniquely positioned almost just because of the enterprise software that it has and how that could possibly power the contact center of the future. I mean, I think I was reading a Gartner Magic Quadrant on cloud database systems where SAP was a leader. And I think, that's kind of a good example of how they can kind of use all these leading capabilities and potentially funnel these insights into the contact center. And I think it's very interesting to see SAP in this market. And I think, there's lots of exciting possibilities for the future. And we received some of those news of some of those possibilities this week. And yeah, I don't know if I'll go back to the agent console as kind of one example of this. And I don't know if you can kind of tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about kind of the improvements that you've made there.
Yeah, a few different improvements. And so I would say here's what we noticed during the pandemic, and here's what many companies noticed during the pandemic, that the customers that had actually digitally transformed and moved to the cloud were able to be more resilient and more agile. So now that agent console has a sudden 360-degree view of the client. They didn't have that before. That agent console doesn't have a delay in data coming from the back end like you would with many of our competitors on the market, because there's so much additional required in layers of integration to pull that data to the front end. So on the agent console side, you suddenly see that tightness of time with data replication. You have the data feeding in, because again, we are one of the leaders in the market, and we have been for years with our Gigya acquisition around Customer 360 and data. So you have the ability to have that data as a part of that service experience, so that you, Charlie, could be the same Charlie that's calling in to make an order, make a claim against something, create a ticket, ask for help, etc., pre, post, or during a transaction. So that agent console is something that gives that 360-degree view of the client. It gives the power to the hands of the agent in order to resolve issues quickly, with data served up from all of the different access points within the client's or about the client from the company information that is held.
Yeah, I think that's particularly interesting, because for how long have we heard of this concept of the 360-degree view of the customer, but how many companies can actually achieve it? Well, not really many from kind of experiences, but now, kind of through thanks to companies like SAP, these capabilities are actually tangible for contact
Yeah.
centers. And I think that's a really exciting possibility, and how that can empower the contact center agents and to kind of quicken contacts and to improve contacts, especially in a world where their job is becoming much harder thanks to the automation, giving them only kind of the complex queries. I think it's an important kind of improvement, and it'll be great to kind of see that in action. And kind of another improvement that you've made is also in your case management workflows. I don't know if you can give us kind of an example
Sure.
of one of those, and kind of how it helps to improve customer service.
And there's a few. So there would be case management directly through the service console. There's also the tie-in with field service management. So I can think of many examples, but let's take an example of Ream, who is a company right now who works with us on service. They're a big air conditioning manufacturer. If you think of them being a real B2B business, and they need to think about things like, how do they initially size overall the air conditioning that units that are required for a footprint of a building, and then determine how they would serve. So up front, the determination of the sizing that's required for a building or a structure, and then making sure that they are in connection with their service technicians that are actually putting the product at the site or at the physical location. And then you think back to how they actually focus on installation, how they call field service as it's required. In the past, what has happened is there have been these antiquated frameworks for how something goes from a customer making a transactional purchase to how installation happens to what happens after the sale if the product doesn't work quite right. Now we're at a point in the market where customers like you and I just expect almost invisible CX, almost invisible service. And so if you think about the case management and flows, that the company now, the brand, has the ability to say, how do I delight my customer? I can actually decide that I want the flows to work in a way that drives business logic, as opposed to something that was just operationally managed behind the scenes by IT in the past. So I will tell you, having been in this market for the last 26 years, in the past, what would happen is IT would say, okay, after we install, then there's really no point of contact with the client. Now, from the servicing console, you could actually decide with the flows how exactly you want that service experience to be. And the reason that we made this change was based upon what our customers told us. So you could simply say, you know what? After we actually install something, we would like a service call to naturally be held proactively with the client 2 days later to see if that was satisfactory. We would like there to be a maintenance call that happens at X point. And you can dictate as that customer advocate what you want the future to look like for that experience. So it's more of a business driver. And that is really because in listening to clients, what we're noticing is there is absolutely a need for IT to manage many of these processes, but the business wants to make sure they're managing customer delight. So now the business is able to say, with the democratization of some of that technology control, the business is able to say, I'd like to make sure that this is how we service the clients. I want this to happen, this to happen, this to happen. And I'm going to give you another example of an experience I recently had. I was in a room with a client, and we were taking those, those 3M sticky notes, the little 3x5 sticky notes. We asked them to outline what their service experience is today. And so they all wrote out the pieces of that on these different 3x5 cards, just literally the steps. This happens, then this happens, and then this happens. And what was interesting is if you take those 3x5 sticky notes off of the whiteboard and you say, now it's a white piece of paper, what do you want it to be? Then all of a sudden, there's 2 or 3 other pieces of those sticky notes that come up where clients say, well, gosh, if I were creating a delightful experience, I'd probably do this in between that step and that step that we have today. I'd probably do this at the very end to light up delight with my clients. And that's all possible with our agent console now.
Yeah, I mean, really lots of really kind of fascinating insights there. And I think that example of kind of bringing you closer to kind of the customer experience as opposed to kind of just shifting it off to IT, who kind of process things as an IT developer would instead of somebody that really kind of promotes and understands customer experience. I think that's that's fascinating that kind of you have a vision that works kind of around that. I think that's really
Mm-hmm.
progressive. And I think that's very interesting. And also from the new additions, what I've seen to be kind of what really caught my eye was new integrations with Qualtrics and Microsoft Teams. Could you tell me a little bit more about these and the benefits they will bring to customer service teams?
Yeah, so there's a few things that I will say. So Microsoft Teams, of course, in general, allows for the collaboration with clients. It allows for the collaboration across business units in order to solve customer issues quickly. And what typically happens in customer service centers, and we go and we observe those all the time. And I don't know if you've been in one post pandemic, but unfortunately, things haven't changed fast enough. And so what will happen is I feel so bad for the agents because they're trying to help a client and they are literally toggling across 20 different tabs, and maybe they're looking at one screen and they physically have to turn and look at the other. So you see what happens. My face turns away from you. You don't feel as important. You don't feel like the priority all of a sudden because I'm looking at another screen in order to service you. And so this native integration into Teams for collaboration, and then also, like I mentioned before, with more of that customer data rolling in natively as a part of our new product, that allows the agent to just look right at you the entire time, be looking at you and be working through one screen in order to service the client. And then as it relates to the Qualtrics integration, I think this is the first to market here around what we're doing with Discover XM. And it really is starting to pull customer sentiment into the servicing experience, surveying into the customer servicing experience, which has never ever been done before. So let me give you an example of where this really comes into play. You think across all industries, they have some sort of a metric for customer satisfaction or net promoter score. And what typically happens is it's not until that transaction is done that the customer is asked, well, how did they feel about that? And usually it's so far past the transaction being done that then there's no real relationship where they can go back and say, well, I didn't mean to be abrupt with you on the phone. I didn't know that this one thing was important to you. And so this integration allows us to have insights earlier, allows a client to have insights earlier into those differentiators that are important to them. And I would say, I get so excited about this topic, so I'm just going to say one more thing on this. When it comes to customer experience in general, there's many business people who are trying to figure out those unique pivot points for their brand that are true differentiators. And many of us and I'm sure being at CX today, you think about this too. Many of us have called it moments that matter. You could call it micro moments. It's those moments where you make a decision about how much you love that brand or whether you're going to go tell 4 people that you don't love that brand, because we know that's the stat too. And so if you have the ability to understand those moments that were particularly painful for the client and you didn't realize it was that impactful. um, that's something where you can create a differentiator. It could be as in an example where, if you look in the healthcare industry, they're able to drive down, um, or they're able to pull back the actual hospital readmittance or reimbursement rates based upon patient satisfaction scores. And so, if you have the ability to understand that before a patient leaves the building or while you're interacting with a patient, in a telehealth call, as an example, that would be a situation where you're able to save it before you're trying to go back and make it right with a customer.
Excellent. Well, I think it'll be interesting though for our viewers to kind of know where they can maybe find out a bit more kind of about the SAP App Giver tool and all the other new exciting innovations that we've talked about today.
Oh, absolutely. So there, I will tell you this, having come into this company about 7 months ago, Charlie, I have been shocked at how humble we are in the marketplace. I think that we talk about some things, we probably don't talk enough about the customer stories, and we need to do more of that. And so, and I've heard it loud and clear since I've been here at the company. So, through my sales organization and through our marketing organization, we're going to do a better job of making sure that we have some real clear information that's going out to the market that is a cohesive set of both customer stories, but also the product features and future vision roadmap. So I would say, for the people listening today, looking out on our website over the next 30 to 60 days should be very interesting, as we move forward, because we do look to be louder in this market. And it's fascinating to me. I mean, we have a brand that's been around for 50 years, and we have such a focus on customer delight here, more so than anywhere else I've ever been. It's let's focus on customer delight. Let's delight every single customer. But then we don't, as a company, go back and say, well, let's market everything that we're doing. Let's make every single brand eligible to be seen on our website. So I do think we have the ability to tell better stories, and I do think we have the ability to talk a little bit more about some of the product capabilities, features, benefits, extensibility than we are today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear some of those stories myself because, just from our conversation, there's been so many kind of thought-provoking kind of golden nuggets of information that we could very much well dig into much further. But I think kind of for now, I think that's a great overview of all the new additions to SAP Cloud. And it's been very kind of thought-provoking, as I say, for me. So thank you very much for chatting to me today, Jen.
Yeah, I'd like to leave you with one last comment, if I may.
Yeah, go for it.
So, so here's what I would say. There are many companies that I've been at where I feel, gosh, there's some potential there, but we don't have the potential end to end to really take the market by storm and create a new pioneer in new ways. I could not be more excited about what we're about to do in the market. And let me give you insight into why I feel that way. First, Ritu, my peer, just came from a different company, Salesforce. She was there for 10 years. She was at Oracle for 10 years before that. I've been at 5 major tech companies, most recently Salesforce and AWS. And I think the two of us came over to SAP realizing that the SAP CX portfolio had progressed over the years. And I almost think about it like different chapters. There's the building chapter, there's the refinement chapter, and then there's the cloud native chapter, and there's soaring to the cloud. That is what we're about to do. So I'm the first to say, as an executive, are we exactly where we want to be right now? No, absolutely not. Are we going to get there? You bet. And I think the goal that we both have is what I hear from customers every day, which is just make it easy, make it seamless, make it cloud native, make it invisible to our clients that we have these products. We just want it to feel easy and feel magical. And so that's what she and I are working on together to do, to really make CX something that feels like it's seamless as a CX experience, as opposed to something where it's service, sales, marketing, commerce. So you get the point. So thrilled to talk to you today. Thank you again for making the time.
No, it's been great to talk to you, and I think that's point is a brilliant point to end on. I mean, I could really tell kind of your passion for this market, and it's great to see SAP kind of evolving into a really growing force within the kind of CCaaS space, and I'm sure that will only continue. So yeah, thanks again for joining me today, Jen.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Excellent, and thank you everybody for watching. Bye for now, and see you again soon.